Welcome and hello. Thank you so much to the Oxford American for hosting this talk. I am Snowden Wright, the author of the recently published piece on the OA Now titled Nancy Lemon's Resurrection. I'm here with Nancy Lemon herself. We are coming to you from Lemuria Books in Jackson, Mississippi. Lemuria is a bit of a legend in Jackson and it happens to be celebrating its 50th anniversary this month. So it's a very special occasion to be back here. Nancy, I was thinking recently how because this was essentially my hometown bookstore, the first author event I ever went to was for a fellow New Orleans author, Anne Rice. She was here. I was 12 years old and I was obsessed with her vampire books. And so I remember standing outside of the door in line with a stack of my books to get signed. And a person behind me tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around to see this very large, very adult gentleman. And he says to me, he says, "Little boy, excuse me, little boy." That's really what he called me. "Do your parents let you read those books?" And I looked at him and said, "Yes, sir. My parents let me read whatever I want, so long as I read." And then
Good answer.
I turned to this middle-aged man and said, "Do your parents let you read these books?"
And you were how old?
I was 12. And so it's a pleasure to be back here with another New Orleans author sitting in the same spot where I first met Anne Rice.
So that was here, not New Orleans, though.
That was here, but
Oh,
she
that
was a fellow New Orleans author in this store.
wow.
All right.
I have a friend who would always talk about how Anne Rice would get paid. She would receive her checks like in boxes because she made so much with,
Royalty checks and
yeah.
boxes.
I
Wow.
mean, I think he was just he was a starving artist himself, so I think he was just
Must be nice. Nancy Lemon was born in New Orleans and is the author of six books, including The Ritz of the Bayou, being reissued by Hub City Press, Lives of the Saints, being reissued by New York Review Books, and The Oyster Diaries, also from New York Review Books. She's written for the Paris Review, Harper's, Lakeland's Quarterly, and last but certainly not least, the Oxford American. April 7th will see the publication of her first novel in 24 years, I believe, The Oyster Diaries. But that's not all. It will also see the reissue of her first two books, Lives of the Saints, her first novel, which is being reissued by Hub City Press, and The Ritz of the Bayou, a work of nonfiction, which is being reissued by New York Review Books. So, Nancy, my first question for you involves this very special occasion in your career and I hope your life. What led to this alignment of the stars whereby we have three new books by you coming out on the same date?
I mean, it is a dream come true because my books were falling out of print and they're like your children. You don't want them to expire, you want them to live on after you. But it's a long story. You never stop. What was I doing all those 24 years? You're always writing. You don't stop writing. If I didn't write, I wouldn't be okay. Um, but I don't know, the public is fickle. You have low sales figures. You can't sell yourself. There's a lot of failure and rejection in the life of an artist. And you just have to, I think it's kind of like that line in the Oyster Diaries where I say, only when you cease to hope are your hopes realized.
Hmm. I love that line.
And I mean, I think it's true. I've experienced it several times, but how did it happen? The doors kind of had clanged shut of the business publishing world, and then suddenly they started opening again. I sensed my opportunity and I became very opportunistic. And I mean, I'm not very opportunistic, but yes, I became opportunistic and took my opportunity and struck while the iron was hot. The iron was suddenly hot again.
Which came about first, the reissue of Ritz or Saints?
It was exactly at the same. Well, actually, the NYRB acquired Saints and the new one. And then we made that deal, and like a week later, Meg Reed, the heroic publisher of Hub City Books, just wrote me a letter and said, "Is the Ritz of the Bayou available?" And I said, "Yes, yes, yes."
Wonderful. I'm so excited for you. I often think that a writer's career, as well as her life, can be mapped across the front matter of her books, including the epigraphs, the dedication, the flap copy, the acknowledgments. And I wonder if we could use that as a rubric for your career as well as your life. Lives of the Saints is dedicated to SAM, the initials. Is that a dedication to your friend and fellow writer, Susan Minot?
Yes, it is.
What was her relationship to the writing of Saints?
Um, she, we met at college at Brown University, and then, but we didn't really become friends there. We became friends after, when her mother was killed at the end of our college years, and she had 7 children, and Susan had to go kind of take care of her father, and the younger children. So that was kind of like being a recipe for having a nervous breakdown later. And that's kind of a heavy duty thing to take on right when you graduate from college, plus the grief. So I wanted to distract her from her grief and entertain her and console her. So I started writing to her about my adventures in New Orleans, and we just had this huge 4-year correspondence, which is an unbelievable way to get to know someone, just really unbelievable. She was always so encouraging, and then she started saying, "You're sinking into a quagmire there in New Orleans. You need to come to New York. That's where the young people have to go." And so I did. And I mean, that's how I found the key to my life, because I had written Lives of the Saints when I got back from college. It took 3 months to write it, but like 7 years to get it published, because, the business is so hard. It's so hard to do business. You're a writer, you're sort of shy and solitary. It's really hard to sell yourself. Plus, you're sending out your manuscript from this into a huge slush pile from New Orleans. I mean, it's a miracle that anyone even sent me these nice rejection letters. Um, and whereas we went to Columbia graduate school in the writing department, where you went also,
I
right?
did. I did. Mhm.
I did find that the professors were like literary heavy hitters there, and they could help you, and they did help me. And I was able to identify the people, like in the publishing industry, when I saw Gordon Lish give a lecture, I just smote my forehead and said, "That is the only man who would take a chance on me." And I was right. And so in those days, it was before computers. You had a manuscript, typewriters, whiteout, okay, the whole thing, antiquated terms that you may not even know. But um, so I was clutching my manuscript. I went to Alfred A. Knopf. I went to the receptionist and I said, "Is Gordon Lish here?" And he came out and he said, "I'm racing, babe. What is it?" And I said, "This is my heart's blood." And then this is a total fairy tale, because this was on a Friday, and he called me on Monday morning, and said, "You and me, kid, we're going straight to the top." I mean, okay. Then he said, I have to just get the approval from Bob Gottlieb, who was the boss.
Mhm.
And then I don't know what came over me, but just for the first time in my life, I said something businesslike, and I said, "Okay, well, after the contract." Oh, he said, "Will you be willing to make changes?" And I said, "Okay, after the contract, right?" I don't know where it came from, but I do know where it came from, because you remember A Confederacy of Dunces.
Yeah. Mhm.
He had worked with Bob Gottlieb for years on the book, but
Hmm.
never got a contract, without a contract.
And what
And
happened
then,
to him?
yes, he committed suicide. So I guess that's where it came from,
Hmm.
my comment. And he said, yes, yes, yes. And maybe it was in Bob Gottlieb's mind too, for all I know, you know?
Right.
Um, so she was part of the path that led me to all this. I couldn't have, Gordon Lish, he gave me the key to my life, totally. Because before that, my whole family was like, she's aimless, she's drifting, what is she doing? But then after you get your first book contract, they kind of leave you alone a bit more. You notice that?
I've had that experience, definitely. Susan's picture is actually on the wall right around there. What to show you after this.
Yeah, too.
Thank you for talking about Gordon Lish because that brings me to my next question. Gordon is the dedicatee for the Ritz of the Bayou. What was his involvement with that work of nonfiction?
Really, just that he signed it on and published it because it was assigned by Tina Brown. It was so brilliant of her to assign that for me because it was just a dream come true for me to be able to go back home for 9 months and plus to just chronicle what I saw. I didn't have to dream anything up out of my head. But when she saw the finished product, she kind of said, huh? What? Like apparently she wanted facts. So and I was interested in the vibes and the atmosphere and the deeper meaning of it all. Um, so then he was my editor and he was willing to publish it. And I really think that I can't believe they let me do all that. Maybe it's because when you're young, you're a beautiful young girl. I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't believe they let me get away with everything I did in that book. It's so it's not nihilistic or anything, but it's just so not journalism. Did you read the afterword?
I did.
And so, I asked my brother's advice, and he's a journalist, and he basically said, "No, I think the journalists won't like it if you get in their lane with your poetic little, whimsical little, But and so I think in a way he was right because as far as I could tell, it didn't really do very well. But now it's having a second life.
Must be nice to have a second to publish it twice.
Totally. I mean, hopefully now it'll stay in print.
I'm sure it will. Going along with the front matter, I believe your epigraphs can be a framework to look at your influences. You've mentioned, so the epigraphs for Saints is Even the Wall. You already mentioned that his work, Brideshead Revisited, was not an influence on Saints. I haven't read the first Brideshead, but Brideshead Revisited is pretty good. And I'm joking. But
He's just trying to redeem himself because, yeah. Okay, go on.
how was Even the Wall an influence on the book and your style as a whole?
I first read him maybe after, I used to feel like some things are cultivated tastes. You don't like them at first, which I would say oysters, scotch, and maybe the New York Review of Books. I don't know, stuff like
Mhm.
that, because that was very intellectual. And in New Orleans, it's kind of anti-intellectual. But so the Evelyn Waugh, yes. The first time I read, he's kind of like that. But the first book I read of his was Black Mischief, which I don't think would be allowed today. I don't think it would. But you read it and at first you think, oh, this is just too wicked. This is just too naughty. It's like his wicked wit. But then it sticks with you, and that's kind of what separates the wheat from the chaff in literature when it just comes back to haunt you,
Mhm.
and so it was like that. And then but Brideshead Revisited is his more extravagant, romantic, type of book, and I prefer his wicked wit. He's very restrained. He's very terse. I love that. Um, he has these books that are just incredible satires. He has a satire of journalists called Scoop. Love that one. Um, and he has a satire of California called The Loved One. But it's just something I always love. Now I constantly reread him because I still love him so much.
I always thought an influence on Lives of the Saints might be this novel called Brother of the More Famous Jack by Barbara Trapido. Have you ever read that?
Never heard of it.
Came out in 82, so I thought it might have been in the air at the time.
Where does it come from?
It's a book about a character falling in love with a family that's not her own.
And where is it set?
I believe it's set in England. It's been a while since I read it.
Well, I have to write that down. What's it called?
Brother of the More Famous Jack.
Oh, okay.
It's a beautiful book. I
Is
love
it
it.
still in print, do you think?
I think it might be. It might not be though.
Okay. No, but what influenced it? Let me think back all those years ago. What were my influences? Kay Gibbons. Do you remember
Yeah.
Kay Gibbons? She said something once about how your first novel just seeps out of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it was kind of like that, but I always had my method was I'm a hideously copious journal keeper since a really young age. In fact, I remember when I was 10 years old, I was writing my autobiography
Wow.
because my father came in the room and I was embarrassed and I hit the page. And I just remember the first line was, at the age of 10, I don't remember the rest because what had I done at the age of 10? But um, that's where I kind of get my material and my ideas. I look back at them for drama and, skeleton of something. And so, I mean, I was influenced by my journals, my own journals.
You were your own influence?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's great. I think that fits perfectly. Your novel Malaise is dedicated to your husband, and the Oyster Diaries is dedicated to your daughters and your late father. I'm curious about the influence of your family on Oyster Diaries, particularly because it's so much about husbands, fathers, and daughters.
Well, my daughters are hilarious. They're older now, so I just learn so much from them. They teach me so much, and it's supposed to be the other way around, I think, between mothers and daughters, but maybe I taught them when they were young, but they're just so hilarious. It's really shocking. So if I could just follow them around with a notepad, that's all I would have to do. So that's the daughters. My father was just completely sui generis. You could not put him in a box. He was just a world-class nut. Okay. And, nuts kind of have the secret of life. And then my husband he's a tycoon. So I've learned a lot about economics from him.
Tycoon?
Yes.
Does he self-identify as a tycoon?
No, but he's a businessman.
Businessman.
So I call him a tycoon, but he's not literary at all. If he reads my manuscripts, if I give him something to read, he just doesn't say anything. And then I'll say, well, did you like it? And he'll say, yeah, that's it. So it's kind of like he's not literary, okay, but he's hilarious. He has a very mannered wit, kind of like Evelyn Waugh, kind of like Groucho Marx. So does his entire family. So yes, I've gotten a lot of material from them. They're incredibly witty. You asked me before, why funny? Why funny? Why always funny? I don't know, but maybe that's why. I'm just surrounded by funny people.
Hmm. Speaking of your father, he is the oyster grader from the Ritz of the Bayou, and he also makes more of an appearance in the Oyster Diaries. I believe the one of my favorite lines about him from Ritz is he may live greatly in the law and drink the bitter cup of heroism and wear his heart out after the unattainable.
Which must be a quote from somewhere.
Really? From
Kind of.
him or from
No,
somewhere
no,
else?
it must be like a mishmash of, I do think I used to do that a lot. I mean, Lives of the Saints is filled with quotes, at least they're in quotations, you know,
Mhm.
but they're unattributed, like Chateaubriand and stuff. And I just was incorporated them into it because I love those lines. But I'm sure that that line is a mishmash of stuff. I don't know. It's probably from Oliver Wendell Holmes or something.
Really?
Probably.
Hmm. I was also struck by the line referring to a different character. He was a man who had, at some juncture, come to know himself, and therefore had come to despise himself, and therefore was deemed worthy of the name wise. That always reminds me of one of my favorite techniques you use, which is the aphorism. I believe that Southern writers love to taxonomize Southerners. What leads you to do that about the South and Southerners?
Well, I mean, you know, the Southern stuff, I mean, I live in Washington, D.C. now. I let's just talk about the quote you quoted, because that's I think that is wisdom, because it's humility.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I mean, the Ritz of the Bayou is full of those aphorisms. So, like I said in my afterword, when I read it, reread it to write the afterword, I thought, you know, who are you, La Rochefoucauld, you know, because or the maxims of La Rochefoucauld, because it's all these little maxims, but I should get back to that. I should do that again. Maybe then I would live up to my early.
I believe you utilize aphorisms and axioms in Oyster Diaries.
I mean, I don't think it's just about Southerners, but yes, I used to be very obsessed with the Southerners. Am I still? But maybe I'm played out on the Southerners. I mean, here I am in Jackson. I'm trying to figure out the genie spirit of the place, as Walker Percy used to say. And I think it's because, like New Orleans, it seems to have a very, very, very unusually high nativity rate, meaning that people who are from here stay here. And that just makes so much difference in a place. Like I have this card on my table in my office from one of my father's best friends, and it's for his birthday or something. And it says something like, just as my father my father loved your father, so I love you. And it's just to have that kind of depth going back through so many generations, it's just so beautiful,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, that's lovely.
So I mean, there is that about the South. The people, I mean, I am getting the genie spirit of Jackson. I'm getting it.
Have you visited Jackson before?
Oh, not in 20, 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm getting it.
Getting it?
Yep.
Oh, good. You should revisit more. I've been thinking about your particular style. We've touched on humor, we touched on aphorisms. There's also the repetition that you utilize. Some of them include the phrase wasteful youth. Hearts are always breaking into a million pieces on the floor. What led you to this style of utilizing words and phrases as harmonic refrains?
Okay, well, honestly, this is kind of prosaic, but I honestly think, like I said, when I'm rereading my journals to find out what I think and what I did, I also find out what my style is when nobody's watching me. Like if I put a blank page into the typewriter, forget it. I would be so self-conscious and constricted, and not sure. Well, maybe I could, but you know, that's I just it's kind of adds an extra layer to the work to work my work day, because instead of just starting on a blank page, I have to like remember who I really am from my journals and what my style is, and then I have to transfer it and transmogrify it to whatever the program is, the plot. Well, plot, that's not my strong suit, but um so it's kind of laborious, but I think that's it just comes from my soul.
Is music an influence on it at all?
Probably, probably. I mean, opera in the Oyster Diaries,
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
huge.
And one last stylistic maneuver you use is fragmentation. And you do it especially in Ritz of the Bayou, but I think you do it in all of your works where there's a lot of white space on the page. In the piece, I call it the typographical TARDIS that allows us to move through space and time.
What's the second word after typographic?
TARDIS is a Doctor Who reference, the TV show Doctor Who. It's been on air for 75
I heard
years, if that. But
how
it's
do you
just me.
spell it?
TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. It's just a spaceship and a time. And
I see. So it's not a word, it's a thing.
that's the
in that
thing.
show.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So, what led you to using fragmentation in your work, and what made it more of a prevalent technique in Ritz?
Maybe Gordon Lish taught me that technique. I think he liked it. Also, like I said, there used to be just typewriters and manuscripts, and then there was something called whiteout. And so when I was editing things, I would literally just paint over for the cuts, and then you could see it with the white spaces, and it was so much better that way. I don't know, it was organic, but and obviously it's a preventative or antidote to boredom if all you have to do is read these kind of short snippets, but then they should pack a wallop though. You're gonna do it like that, I think.
Anais Nin said that keeping a diary allowed her to taste life twice. Have you found that not only in the fact that the Oyster Diaries is formatted as a diary, but also with the reissues of your first two books? Are you reliving those books again for the second time?
Um, well, I did read the Ritz of the Bayou because to write the afterword and to edit it a little bit. And I did relive that. I was shocked. I was very surprised. I tried to read Lives of the Saints to see if I could edit it. And first, I just would try to edit it when I thought, because I think she's always talking about how great the guy is, Claude Collier. And when I was reading it, I thought, methinks the lady doth protest too much because she just keeps talking about how great he is. And I would have trimmed some of that, but every time I tried to trim it, it just was like, no, then it's not going to work. You kind of have to go whole hog or nothing. But I couldn't finish reading it, so I've only read the beginning. I just couldn't. It's too painful. I don't know. Maybe I labored over it for so long. It is an odd experience reading your own work, don't you think?
I do. I do.
It's strangely painful in a way that I can't really define.
Especially something that came out that long ago. It must be
I
difficult.
mean, it's partly that I read this line. Someone was writing this to F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's the trouble with writing. You don't want to read your published work unless you're a masochist who wants to be tortured by regrets. You always see ways you could have improved it. And I don't know, it's just like it's so set in stone at that point, and you can't fix it.
Right. One last question for you. Jean-Luc Godard described the editing room as a sort of time machine where he got to experience the past, present, and future all at once. He was seeing the past of what he filmed in the past, and he was in the present moment of editing it, and in order to predict what audience would experience of it in the future. So in these three books, we have the past and the reissues, we have the present in the latest book. What about your future? What are you working on now?
Well, I think I should work on something based on that question. And it would be, past, present, future. I don't know if that's the title or those are the three parts, but not in a traditional way, but in the way where, like we were talking about earlier, it would be very intriguing the way Virginia Woolf does it in probably The Voyage Out, or maybe it might be The Partagers. Do you know that book?
I don't know that one.
Yeah, the mother is dying, but she's been dying for a long time, and the family is starting to get a little impatient about it. And boom, it's over. I mean, the father is already has a new girlfriend and stuff. And then boom, part two. She's not only died, but it's later, 5 years later maybe. And that's so intriguing because you can, but what am I doing next? I mean, what did you think of my travel essays idea?
That sounds like a good idea.
That's it?
Think
Sounds
it
like
would
a
work.
good idea.
I would
Well,
make
do
it.
you think it needs, because Christopher Isherwood said the ideal travel book would be something in the nature of a search. I mean, you got to have a reason to turn the page, no matter how exquisite it is. It can't, I mean, you are on a search to learn about these places that you visit, but there's no drama in that really. And I do think that the reason why Africa, the safari part chapter was so interesting is that I didn't have to worry about the history. Whenever I go somewhere, I have to understand the history, even the politics to some extent to try to get the total picture. But it really is just wild animals there and people and how they live together. That's it. And
Mhm.
so I don't know. I just don't know. But speaking of Evelyn Waugh, he he would use his material twice. He wrote travel books, straight travel books about his travels, and then he would turn it into a novel. So I don't know how I would. So you don't know which way to go. Should you turn it into a novel or should you just?
I would consider doing a search into your family history, something akin to your version of your brother Nicholas Lemon's latest book.
Okay, well, it's kind of excruciating because one of the novels in the drawer during the 24 years was an intergenerational saga from New Orleans that started at Waterloo, Battle of Waterloo. And I just don't know if I could bear the pain of looking at it again. I can see that, I have to now question the quality of my products during that time. Like it wasn't all just completely arbitrary.
Mhm.
But I did cannibalize little bits of it here and there for the Oyster Diaries, which you probably detected in your penetrating comments on it. But yeah, so well, I forgot the question.
I did too. What are you working on? Was the original
Yeah,
question.
right, right.
So there we have it. Thank you so much for talking with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the Oxford American for hosting this podcast. And thank you to Lemuria Books in Jackson, Mississippi for giving us a space to conduct this interview. Please remember that on April 7th will be the release of the Oyster Diaries from New York Review of Books. That's Nancy's latest novel. And on that same date will be the reissue of Lives of the Saints, Nancy's first novel being reissued by New York Review of Books. And that date would also see the reissue of The Ritz of the Bayou by Hub City Press. Please go out and check out these wonderful books. I'm sure you'll love them.
Thank you so much, Snowden and Oxford American. Really means a lot.
Well, thank you.